विज्ञान की अनकही कहानियाँ। आइए हम सुने विज्ञान की अनसुनी कहानियाँ।
Hello listeners, you're listening to Vigyan Ki Awaaz podcast program on STEM popularization, catalyzed and supported by the Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India and Media for Community Foundation. Project devised and designed by Dr. R. Sridhar and assisted by Ashish Tiwari. Local coordination and production, Professor Subramanian. Content writing by Priyanshu and post-production by Professor Kaushik P. Kanchan of Garden City University, Bengaluru.
Garden City University, conquer we shall all adversity. Together we stand in unity. Together we strive for prosperity. GCU, emphasis on life. GCU, emphasis on life.
In today's episode, we have with us Dr. Shaurya Kaushal, a visionary scientist and entrepreneur, and one of the co-founders of Pranos Fusion Energy, India's first nuclear fusion startup. With a PhD in computational physics from Jncasr and a mechanical engineering degree from BITS Pilani, Dr. Kaushal has seemingly blended scientific expertise with entrepreneurship to drive India's clean energy revolution. His passion for innovation is deeply rooted in his army background, inspiring him to build homegrown, cutting-edge solution for India's energy future. A national-level cyclist and a relentless problem solver, Dr. Kaushal is on a mission to make nuclear fusion a reality, ensuring a sustainable and energy-secure future for India and beyond. Dr. Kaushal started off by giving us a brief introduction of his specialization and the present research work that he's doing.
I'm Shaurya Kaushal. I'm one of the co-founders for Pranos Fusion Energy. Pranos Fusion Energy is India's first nuclear fusion startup. I am a PhD from Jncasr, Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research. Here I did my PhD in computational physics. Before that, I did my bachelor's from BITS Pilani. I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I'm also a national level sports player in cycling. And my drive to do and build in India comes from my army background. My father's been serving in the army for the longest, and I moved to Bangalore for my studies and finished my PhD here, and the startup also started here after that.
He then started to explain his startup, Pranos Fusion Energy, in a way that non-science audience can understand.
The beginning of that comes from wanting to understand the need for energy. For human civilization right now, the cap to be able to achieve big things, let's say if you want to achieve from Earth to Mars, from seawater to drinking water, a lot from empty plates to full plates with food, a lot of the problems are capped by energy. So energy becomes the cap for civilization. Now, how do we answer that need? We can't be burning coal because there is high CO2 emissions, there is greenhouse effects, climate change, and this has put a lot of international pressure, not just on India, but generally for all countries, where fossil fuels are not just running dry, but they are not a sustainable way of living anymore. So this brings us to what is clean energy, and we've looked at solar, we've looked at wind, we've looked at geothermal, but the most energy dense or the most efficient way of getting energy is the nuclear energy. Now, nuclear energy actually comes in two forms. There are two parts of nuclear energy. The usual form of nuclear energy that we have seen when we say a nuclear power plant, the picture that comes to your mind is a fission power plant. Fission is a reaction in which a bigger atom like uranium is broken down into smaller atoms, and that produces energy. Now, this process is highly radioactive and needs very high safety control mechanisms so that the energy can be produced safely. Now, we have a lot of fission power plants. The second and the most relevant to this conversation is fusion energy. Fusion, by definition, we see fusion happen every day. Whenever you look at the sun, you're seeing fusion happen. That's when two lighter atoms like hydrogen and its isotopes combine to form a helium atom or a larger atom and produces energy. Now, This form of nuclear energy is not radioactive, it's highly safe, but it's also really difficult to do. Right now, humanity stands at a point where we have been trying to make fusion a possibility for 40, 50 years, but it's only on the horizon of 10 years now, where a lot of fusion companies as well as governments are trying to put all of their efforts in making fusion energy possible. Fusion energy is not just clean, but it's also more energy dense. So as compared to fission, where after the reaction is done, you have to take care of radioactivity, you need to contain uranium, plutonium. Fusion doesn't have a problem like that. Fusion is much more safer, but the only problem right now is it's an engineering problem. So that's how we're trying to answer a lot of India's needs, where India has a growing population. India has to answer for that. There is also increased AI dependence. The data centers that we have, there's increased compute. All of them need electricity, and cleaner electricity will make sure that we are able to sustain that for longer without having adverse implications on the environment that we live in.
Professor then went on to explain why he chose Bangalore to establish his startup.
In Bangalore?
Yes, the startup is based in Bangalore and it's incubated under Jncasr, which is Department of Science and Technology University. So our goal was to, India has a rich history in nuclear energy. You would have heard of Homi Bhabha and all the initial days right after independence. India took a very fast moving pace towards nuclear energy so that it could sustain. And we've been inspired by that. At some point in time, Homi Bhabha gave us the 3-stage fission plan and how India could become a nuclear energy superpower in some fashion across the world. And now the time has come that we want to propose a 3-stage fusion plan for India. And the fusion plan starts with a lot of the initiatives that the government is now taking. If you would have listened to the budget that got released, the interim budget just now, there is talk of a national nuclear mission. As part of the national nuclear mission, India wants to get to 100 gigawatts of nuclear energy by 2047. Now that is a goal for a country. Right now, India only contributes 1% of nuclear energy in the total energy pool. For us to be sustainable, for us to get to net zero, we need to get to those numbers, and the government's already taking initiatives. Most of these initiatives are in fission, but we want to start a new initiative in fusion by having a startup that can essentially work with the government and address problems together.
Dr. Kaushal then shared his opinions on where India stands on a global level in the field of research, science and technology, particularly in the nuclear energy region.
In the entire world, India is probably among the top 5 countries that have been able to harness nuclear energy. And it's not just now, but historically we've had scientists and researchers and leaders who have been able to understand the vision of what nuclear energy could do. For example, when in 1958, when the rest of the world was essentially fighting over nuclear weapons, India was one of the first countries to actually work towards energy and not weaponry. So just to put things in context there, so I would say on a world level, India has historically had great achievements and still continues to do so. But most of these efforts have been from governments. We see on a world scale right now that a lot of the efforts, along with governments, there's private startups that have started. Let's say for the US has 25 fusion companies, privately owned companies that work alongside government programs so that fusion energy can come much faster. Europe has around 10 companies. India's neighborhood in Asia has around 10 companies. India right now doesn't have a fusion company, and we want to change that. And an essential part of changing that is understanding the difficulty of the problem and working with the government to do so. We are working on simulations and design. Fusion is a very multi-physics problem right now. So there are different aspects of the technology that needs to be perfected before a power plant can be set up. A major aspect of that is essentially looking at fluid dynamics, heat transfer, and design and simulation. So these are the aspects that we are trying to address from our end, so that we also stay compliant to government rules and energy acts, and as well as support the government in getting to fusion technology.
Dr. Kaushal then shared his journey of how he transitioned from mechanical engineering to computational physics and then to entrepreneurship.
So this startup is called Pranos Fusion. Pranos is made of two words. The first word is prana. Prana is the energy that permeates the universe, and the second word is cosmos. So essentially that put these words together and we have Pranos. So by this we wanted to get some Indianness into because it's also, we're not just India's first nuclear fusion company, but also India's first company representing India in the world. So I think that was an essential part of naming the company. We're based out of Bangalore. And how we decided to start a company was essentially, we had been looking at cleaner energy. A major part of what drives the founders and the team is to elevate human civilization, and specifically Indian civilization, from a struggle to survive. We are always in survival mode because roti, kapda, makan and silicon is not right now. It's a struggle for people on an everyday basis. Once we have abundant energy and we are able to answer all of these problems, we want to elevate the human consciousness to be able to have more meaningful endeavors in life. And I think that's what drove us to do this. In the past, we talk about mythological times when we've had these times when people spent more time in art, more time in science, more time in dance, and dedicating themselves to things that are outside of themselves. So that's been the driving force behind working in the energy place. And I guess the second part was also looking at, we've been following nuclear fusion since 2021. In 2021, a very groundbreaking experiment happened. This was in JET. JET is called the Joint European Torus. It's a reactor located in UK, and they were able to control nuclear fusion for 5 seconds. Now that's essentially controlling the power of the sun here on Earth for 5 seconds. For commercial nuclear technology, you just need to have a fusion reactor that runs for minutes. So that's essentially been our driving force, that such a technology should be also built indigenously in India and for India. I think that's been the driving force.
You were listening to Vigyan Ki Awaaz, a podcast on STEM popularization, catalyzed and supported by National Council for Science and Technology Communication, Government of India. Tune in for more such episodes to Vigyan Ki Awaaz on this platform and also through Spotify, YouTube and Apple Music platforms.
आइए हम सुने विज्ञान की अनकही कहानियाँ।